Hello everyone, my name is Mark Levesque. I'm with Master Plan Network and welcome to an aha moment. You know, aha moments are those times where you go, aha! It's like when we get an inspiration or we get just something from outside of us helps us see something differently than we've seen before. There's large aha moments and smaller ones. You know, any aha moment, it's really when we see life in a different way than we had before. But many times there's large aha moments where it completely changes our life. And I'd like to share a story of a historical character that had a massive aha moment that changed his life and many other lives on earth. And so his name was Saul. Saul was a historical figure from the first century. Saul was born in a wealthy Jewish family of Roman citizenship in the city of Tarsus. And he went to, in his day, what would have been the most prestigious university for his religion and his nation's political system. You see, the Jews had a political system that didn't have separation of church and state. It had both combined into one. Their religion was basically their politics. And Saul was studying from one of the chief leaders of his day, Gamaliel. And so Saul had a tremendous pedigree. He was an accomplished individual from a wealthy family. And he became kind of a defender of the faith. There was a sect that had risen in the first century in that part of the world, the sect of the Nazarene. They were followers of Jesus Christ. And he really saw that as an attack on his traditional religion, the Jewish religion, and political system. And so he really took it upon himself to threaten and to go after people of the way, they called it, followers of Jesus, because he saw it as an affront to the Jewish religion. And so he actually went to see the high priest in Jerusalem. It got papers from the high priest to bring people into bonds and into prison and even to face death who were following Jesus Christ in that day. And so he was really the number two guy in a lot of respects to the high priest, the top individual in the land. And so Paul was on his way to Damascus to bring people in chains who were followers of Jesus. And so he was on the road to Damascus, and he was just struck by a light from heaven. And you can read about that in Acts chapter 9, where a light from heaven came down. It was so powerful, it even knocked him off of his horse. And his men were around, and he had a group of men. He was going to bring people and put them into prison for following Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth. So he was lying on the ground. He had been blinded by the light. The light was so powerful, it knocked him off his horse. And then this voice spoke to him out of the light. Now, it says in chapter 22 of Acts that light is even brighter than the noonday sun. Noonday sun's pretty warm in the area of the Middle East where Saul was. Saul was laying on the ground, and that voice was speaking to him from a light brighter than the sun. Well, he knew that light was like the Shekinah glory light, the glory of God that was in the tabernacle that was spoken of in the Bible. And so it was an extremely bright light, so he knew it was God. And so he heard a voice coming from the light, and the voice said, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And he answered, "Lord," because he knew it had to be God. And he said, "Lord, who are you?" And the voice speaking back to him said, "I am Jesus of Nazareth, who you are persecuting." Now that was an aha moment for Saul, because he knew who this Jesus of Nazareth was, and he knew this light was the light of God. So how was Jesus of Nazareth standing in the light of God? You know, it's a tremendous aha moment. It turned his life upside down. Really, it turned it right side up. Because in that moment, he knew that Jesus was God come in the flesh. And he knew some other things that Jesus was sharing with him. Like Jesus was saying, "Why are you persecuting me?" Well, he was persecuting followers of Jesus by saying that. He was actually saying that Jesus was actually within the followers of Jesus, which is a whole unique perspective that Paul wrote a lot in the Bible about later on. But that was the seed of that revelation, that Jesus would actually be in his followers. So there was Paul's aha moment. And so it was really because in that moment, Saul, who became Paul, the Apostle Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, in that moment, Saul saw his whole world turn upside down because he had a strong religious pedigree. He was a defender of the faith. He was of a wealthy family in the Jewish land. And so Saul saw all that crashing down because here was a man who was standing in the light of God, a man who actually had been hung on a cross, hung on a tree. And in the Jewish religion it says anyone who's hung on a tree is cursed. How could a man be God? How could a man hang on a tree and be God? And also, if he's standing in the light of God, he really did raise from the dead, as the followers of Jesus were saying. It completely changed Paul's life upside down. He was blinded at the moment. A few days later, he was fasting, and he hadn't had anything to drink for several days. A guy named Ananias came to him, laid hands on him, called him Brother Saul, because Jesus had shown Ananias that now Paul was a follower of Jesus, a believer in Jesus. But before that momentary change, it said that Paul was spewing out threatenings and anger against the children of God, against the followers of Jesus. The threatenings was because he saw them as a threat to his religion. And he came from a religion with thousands of years of history. People like Abraham and Isaac, people like David, people like Isaiah, all these great prophets, kings, came out of the Jewish line. And here's a person, Jesus, who looked totally contrary to that. And so he saw that as a complete affront to the Jewish religion. He knew that he had it right. After all, they had the temple. They had the presence of God in the temple. But Paul wasn't aware that God's answer for humanity, for the troubles that humanity has been in, humanity who all of us have had our lives turned upside down by situations that we face, all the different things in life that we face, when we seek God, when we're looking for answers, God can come and enter into our life and give us an aha moment like Paul had. Now, in my life, I had an aha moment that was similar. Paul's aha moment came because his religious upbringing was being challenged by Jesus of Nazareth and his followers. My aha moment was that I didn't understand the nature of God. I didn't understand how God could make a world where there's so many things that go wrong. I didn't understand why people were sick, why there were catastrophes, why there were terrorists, why there were babies being sick. I was really mad at God, like Paul was mad at the early church, the early followers of Jesus. And so I didn't understand it. So I used to say, God is dead, because I would look at the world around me and I would see, God can't be on duty. Look at the mess the world is. But one person said to me, and I got an aha moment about this, he said, well, maybe God made the world perfect and gave us free will, loved us so much he gave us the world, and we messed it all up. Well, that really was an aha moment that started my journey to finding out more. And one day, in my early 20s, I became very ill. And I was suffering from panic attacks. In fact, in the early 80s, they didn't know what a panic attack was, so I had a hard time getting a diagnosis. But it was a stress from work. I was using work to fill a void in my heart. And as I worked harder and harder, I had more and more stress, and the stress caught up with me. And on one very, very bad day, I just kind of fell to my knees and said, God, there's got to be more to life than this. And I felt something change on the inside. And I started looking for answers. And one day I'd been invited to a meeting, and there was a gentleman preaching, and I had another aha moment similar to Paul's, in a flash of light that came to me when I was starting to have a panic attack during the message of this minister that was speaking about Jesus. I was completely hit by this light and knocked back into my chair in the meeting place where I came to hear that minister. And I was changed. My life was changed in an instant. I was completely healed from panic attacks. God hit me with a light. Now, so I've had aha moments that are gradual, more like the other apostles. I've had an aha moment that was kind of radical like the Apostle Paul's. But we all have aha moments in our future if we really take our attention off this world and start looking for answers, seeking God. God said if we ask, we'll receive. If we knock, it'll be open. So you have an aha moment waiting for you. Just all you have to do is turn to God and say, God, I'd like to know more about you. I'd like to know you. And you'll have an aha moment with God. He guaranteed it. So we'll talk about more we'll talk about more aha moments later. But thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this aha moment. Thank you. By the way, you can also find more information at the Master Plan Network website at masterplannetwork.com. You can also find a study guide there as well. Have a great day.